And good morning. And so we've got 13 games tonight. Going to be a long night. People have asked about live streams and whatnot. Live streams on Saturdays with the way I take notes now with every single game. I'm thinking live streams work on Sundays. So that's both for Patreon. Patreon will also have, there's Monday nights we're looking at for a Patreon show kind of thing. And then for the main channel, I'm thinking Sundays for live streams, live reactions to NHL games, the fun stuff. And tonight the fun starts with New Jersey in against Buffalo. So here we have two teams that missed the playoffs last year, who are trying to change the narrative. In New Jersey's case, they had a 4-0 lead on Winnipeg last night, and then it slipped, and it slipped bad. So if you're a Jets fan, you're looking at that game and you're going, wow, we had a great comeback. What an electrifying game. And the announcers were absolutely bonkers by the end of that game. That was just... And the overtime was fantastic. The reason why I don't just see it and go, oh, what a huge disaster for the Devils is they played really well in the overtime and they had their chances, just Brossoit stopped them. On the Buffalo side, of course, they're coming off of a win in their first game against Pittsburgh, and they're trying to show, hey, this time it's for real. We're not going to fall apart this time. And there are some encouraging signs for them, but there are encouraging signs for the Devils as well. The Devils, of course, with that overtime loss, did get the point. Coleman had 2 goals, including the amazing one that he had, and if you haven't seen it, go check it out. Gusev and Vatanen added goals as well for New Jersey last night. So Nikita Gusev looked really good. Jack Hughes looked good, didn't get on the board. I expect him on the board either tonight or in their next game. And the one thing that may stand out for New Jersey as a red flag could be Corey Schneider's injury. And we haven't heard yet who's going to start for them. I'm thinking Blackwood. It'll be Blackwood because it just didn't look good. It looked like a groin pull, which can be a couple of weeks. Or it can be a month. It can be one of those nagging things. On the Buffalo side, Connor Sherry with 2 goals. Dahlin had the other goal for Buffalo in that game. Power play goal, the only one this year so far has been Connor Sherry. He also has the only game-winning goal for the Buffalo Sabres. Miller and Dahlin were +2, both of them, in that game against Pittsburgh. So Colin Miller had a solid start, and Rasmus Dahlin, the guy's a star. Now, overall, New Jersey's won 2 out of 3 games between these two teams, and New Jersey will be facing Carter Hutton tonight, starting his second straight game. Kind of surprised Ullmark didn't get either of the 2 starts. I figured Ullmark and Hutton would split the starts. I'm really surprised that they haven't in the first 2, but no big deal. We're still really early in the season. There won't be any goaltending controversies till at least, Wednesday? You got to think. It's got to be the end of week 1 before you see one. All right, moving along. Montreal and Toronto, the most storied rivalry in hockey. Montreal, of course, coming off of a shootout loss. Toronto's won 2 games so far this year, and they look really good. So if Montreal is going to prove their improvement to the rest of the world, tonight's a good time to do it. And these are, so far, I'm into game 2 out of 6 that start at 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific. So there are a lot of games that start at the same time tonight. So keep in mind when you look at my notes later on, and you go, I didn't get as many notes as he did the previous nights. Yeah, it's going to be tough. Jordan Wheel, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, Thomas Tatar with goals for Montreal in that first game. Power play goal for Tatar. Montreal, you can focus on the fact that they were down 2-0 in that game. They came back. They were ahead 3-2. Ended up going to overtime. Went to the shootout. So there were a lot of positives to take out of that. On the Toronto side, of course, you got Mitch Marner with 2 goals and 2 assists. Morgan Rielly with 4 assists in the first 2 games. I don't think Riley's upset about not getting the captaincy. I think the fans get more upset than he does. I think for Morgan Rielly, it's like, all right, let's do this thing. Matthews 3 goals, Tavares 3 assists. Power play goals, Matthews has 2, Marner has 1. Game-winning goals, Matthews and Cody Ceci have the game-winning goals for Toronto so far. Toronto last year was 3-0-1 against the Montreal Canadiens, but 2 of those wins were in overtime. So when you go to overtime 3 out of 4 games, I'm going to go ahead and say this game goes to overtime tonight. Should be fun. Carey Price will start against Michael Hutchinson. Hutchinson's the one thing I'm curious about with Toronto. Everything in their lineup looks really solid. Like Tyson Barrie's fit in right away. But I do wonder with Hutchinson, like, is he going to be solid enough as a backup, or are they going to need to figure something else out? And they were talking about that last night on TSN's panel as well, along the lines of, if they need to, they can probably find somebody. We can name, 4 or 5 goaltenders right now that are in the American League that we think, well, why doesn't he have a job right now in the NHL? Just 2 off the top of my head would be like DeMang and DeSmith. So, there are a lot of goalies out there, and if Hutchinson doesn't end up being up to par, they have some options. But this should be a really fun game between 2 teams that usually don't like each other very much. Moving along. The Rangers coming off of course, a 6-4 win over Winnipeg, and Ottawa coming off of a loss to Toronto. And this is going to be one of those games where we may start to see how bad things can get for Ottawa. But it is the home opener, so maybe they'll have some energy at the start. Maybe they can pull off a bit of an upset. On the Rangers side of things, their number 1 scorer is Mika Zibanejad so far. 1 game played, 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points. So Zibanejad, a former Senator, I could see him having a big game against the Senators tonight. Trouba, 1 goal, 2 assists, seems to be absolutely overjoyed to be with the Rangers. And Panarin, 1 goal, 1 assist for Artemi Panarin. So far, the investment in those 2 guys has worked out for the Rangers. It's been 1 game. So now we'll see against Ottawa how things go for them. Power play goal in that first game, Panarin. Game-winning goal was actually Howden, had the game-winning goal. Georgiev will play for the Rangers tonight. So they've already gone to their second goaltender. The Ottawa Senators, Sabrin with a goal in that first game. Tkachuk, Ryan also had goals. I get the feeling when I watch Ottawa, I watched them in the preseason, now I've watched them that 1 game in the regular season. Brady Tkachuk could very well be the engine on which this offense is based, and he may play a ton for the Ottawa Senators. Zaitsev and Shabbat had 4 shots each for Ottawa as well. Ottawa won 2 out of 3 meetings between these teams last year. Ottawa's looking to say, hey, we bottomed out last year. We're going to be better this year. This is one of those games where they can kind of show that. Anderson will be in net. He's 0-1 with an .881 save percentage, just for tracking purposes. But, yeah, I mean, Ottawa, it's probably going to be a very long season. Part of the trick, though, when you're in the midst of a long season is at least be entertaining. So that's their aim for tonight. Keep it close, make the Rangers work for it, and in the case of the Rangers, take advantage of the Ottawa Senators who are still in this rebuild, and if you're done yours, you should be able to go out there and beat them. So it should be a fun matchup that not a lot of people are going to end up watching. Of the 6 games that start at 7 o'clock, this one will likely draw the least amount of interest, only because it's Ottawa Rangers. There may have been a feud at some point. Right now, that doesn't feel like there really is. So, we'll see. But now, I have to change boards. Now, next on the list is Tampa Bay and Florida. These teams have to be sick of each other, don't they? And this is the second game of the year between them, and this is regular season between them, but during the exhibition season, they got to know each other pretty well as well. Tampa Bay, of course, won the first game they played this year. And we'll see if they can make it 2 in a row. For Florida, you really can't allow that. For Florida, you really can't allow yourself to be off to that 0-2 start, to have shown that your state rival is still much better than you are. There are a lot of expectations with Florida right now. And, yeah, I think that tonight's an important night for them already. That being said, we know the game's in October, less intense than what happens in April. But keep in mind, those games in October, they matter. Part of the reason that Florida misses the playoffs this last year is they were miserably bad in October. So tonight for Tampa, they'll be going into Game 2 with Mikhail Sergachev, already with 3 assists. Killorn with 2 assists and Kucherov with a goal and an assist. Nikita Kucherov picked up right where he left off in the regular season last year and looks fantastic. Palat had both the game-winning goal and the power play goal in that game, the first game of the year for them. On the Florida side of things, Trocheck had a goal and an assist, and Hoffman had the other goal. There was a shorthanded goal for Trocheck in there as well. So there are positives you can take from this if you're Florida. If they can get their power play going, and if they can hold Tampa off, they have a chance. If Bobrovsky, who's starting tonight, plays like Bobrovsky, they're in good shape. And Tampa, while they haven't confirmed who's starting tonight, I could see it being McElhinney. I could. I would imagine it'll be Vasilevsky, though. So Tampa trying to get to 62 wins again, maybe 63. And the Florida Panthers trying to become relevant this year. If they get off to a start where, say, they win 3 out of their first 10, there's already going to be people saying, oh, well, that's it. Florida's dead again. They're done again. They're in trouble. The interesting thing to me about Florida in that first game, and a lot of this is Vasilevsky's fault, but a team that was offensively potent last year didn't look as offensively potent this year, even though they were winning the puck battles for the most part. So we'll see what happens tonight because, Tampa's capable of putting a team down in the regular season. And people are going to say, oh, what about the postseason? Yeah, we're not in the postseason right now, so we don't need to get that joke going right now. Just hold that off till March. Next up, Columbus, coming off of a loss at home, and now they get to go into Pittsburgh. A Pittsburgh team who, coming off of a loss against Buffalo, should be highly motivated tonight. That team that we saw against Buffalo, that's not the Penguins. I don't know who that is. And I wonder, is Brandon Tanev going to stay on that second line? Are the Pittsburgh Penguins going to have to shuffle things around? I think the answer is going to be yes, and I'm wondering if it's going to be as soon as tonight. On the Columbus side of things, Atkinson got the 1 goal against Toronto, the only point that was scored by a Columbus player. That was on the power play, and Atkinson had 7 shots. So he's out there earning his money already this year. It's up to his teammates to catch up. And I'm looking at Pierre-Luc Dubois. Dubois is a guy who really needs to step up. And they did give a pretty decent chunk of change to Nyquist. So we'll see whether or not the offense improves tonight against Pittsburgh, whose 1 goal in their first game was from Malkin. And that was a power play goal. Schultz, though, had six shots in that game. Justin Schultz, a very good start to the season, even though for Pittsburgh it wasn't a great start to the season. Pittsburgh won 3 out of 4 meetings between them and Columbus last year in the regular season, so they will be looking to get back on track against Columbus today. Matt Murray's confirmed as the starter for Pittsburgh. I would not be surprised to see Columbus go with Merzlikins. The reason being, Korpisalo didn't look like a game stealer last night. So and I'm trying to think of who came up with this phrase, but the phrase which was, when you have 2 starters, you don't really have one. And it's one of those phrases that I'm wondering if I'm going to be using to describe Columbus this year, because their goaltending I think could be an issue this year. Because last night with Korpisalo, it was like, if they had a big save, maybe that would help. The other problem was, though, I don't know, the energy level. We'll see. We'll see if things get better for Columbus, but I kind of sort of have doubts. But again, we're early in the season. 31 fan bases are really excited right now, and then I have to come out and be the wet blanket. I don't like that role. It's not one that I enjoy. So we'll go ahead and move along. Carolina's 1-0. They're in against the Capitals, who are 2-0. These teams are well acquainted with each other from the playoffs and the preseason this year. On the Carolina side of things, Hamilton, 2 assists in that first game. Necas, 1 goal for him. Wallmark with a goal. Howla with a goal. That power play goal in that first game was Necas. On the Capitals side of things, Carlson off to a good start with 3 assists. Lars Eller has the same start with 3 assists. Jacob Vrana, 2 goals, and TJ Oshie, a goal and an assist. So if you're tracking at home, they haven't really needed Ovechkin yet. It's always scary when the Caps don't really need Ovechkin yet. Nah, it's all right, Ovi. The rest of us have got this. Power play goals so far. Orlov and Oshie have power play goals for Washington. So again, they haven't needed Ovi to score goals on the power play yet. Game-winning goals, Vrana and Oshie. So, yeah. Reimer's been confirmed for Carolina and Holtby for Washington. So we'll find out pretty quick here whether or not Carolina worked their magic with another goaltender with James Reimer. And he's got quite the debut tonight because with Holtby, the Capitals should feel pretty good. They're playing on the back half of a back-to-back, so if Carolina can kind of jump on them on that note, we'll see how this game turns out. But Holtby now knows, after watching Samsonov last night, that he's got a really, really good backup. When Phoenix Copley got waived, it surprised a lot of people, myself included, but Samsonov last night showed, yeah, he's ready, and the Capitals now have 2 pretty good goaltenders. Holtby's still your starter, but Samsonov is going to make negotiations between Holtby and the Capitals really interesting. Because remember, Holtby's UFA this summer if the Caps don't keep him. So it's going to be really interesting because you shouldn't feel like you have to pay him like Bobrovsky money to keep him, because if he leaves, Samsonov looks pretty good. And then you still got Copley in the minors as well. So Copley showed last year he can be a backup in the NHL. And that's what Reimer's trying to do for Carolina, prove he is still a backup in the NHL. He is still capable of giving you 25, 30 games. I would think that's what Reimer's going to need to play. Mrazek had shaky moments in that first game, but by the end of it, his numbers were pretty solid. We'll see if we say the same about Reimer tonight, or if Reimer's got his game back together. I always liked Reimer in Toronto. I know not everybody did, but I thought that Reimer took a lot of blame that I don't think was necessarily his fault. I think the defense in front of him was a problem some nights, but that's a whole other story, isn't it? Next up, Dallas. So the Stars in against St. Louis. We're into the first game that starts at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific tonight. And for Dallas, it was a rough start. 3 injuries. Yes, I know Polak's injury. Jack Edwards said horrible things. If you haven't watched the video, the news of the day yesterday where I talked about it, I don't make excuses for what was said, but boy howdy do I think people are taking it way too far. I hope Polak's back as soon as possible. I hope he's okay. And in the cases of both Jason Dickinson and Blake Como, they're going to need him. Como, I think, more than Dickinson. Dickinson may provide more offense than Como, but Como has that physicality to his game. On the St. Louis side, they're looking to bounce back from an overtime loss in Game 1. And still at home, that's got us smart. And it's sort of reminiscent of early last year. Last year, early, St. Louis couldn't win at home. Could win on the road, though. And they had a home-heavy schedule to start the season. It's easy to forget that last year, St. Louis, it's not just that they were, bad in January. Everybody remembers they were bad in January. It's how they got there. And they couldn't win at home, and they had a road-heavy schedule for a while there, and I said, well, they have to win on the road or their season's done. And then they won on the road. Hintz had the 1 goal for Dallas in that first game against Boston. Alexiak and Faksa had 4 shots each in that first game. Klingberg led the way in ice time with 25 minutes and 24 seconds in that first game. Klingberg's going to play a lot. O'Reilly had 2 assists for St. Louis in that first game. Sammy Blais and Alex Pietrangelo both had a goal in that game as well. That power play goal in that game was from Pietrangelo. And Parayko led the way in ice time with 24 minutes and 32 seconds. The interesting thing is, when they brought in Falk, there was some talk about how, maybe they'll play Parayko less. If one game tells you anything, maybe not. Binnington is the confirmed goaltender for St. Louis. Dallas has not confirmed yet who they're going to have. Washington won all 4 meetings with the Carolina Hurricanes in the regular season last year. Didn't help them in the playoffs. Dallas won 3 out of 4 against St. Louis in the regular season last year. didn't help them in the playoffs either. So there's some similarities between these games, with the exception that Carolina pulled off an upset. Dallas could not upset the St. Louis Blues. So it's a second round matchup here, and I would imagine Dallas will have Bishop in net. They just haven't confirmed it yet. Yeah, it should be a fun one. I anticipate another low-scoring game. I have a feeling that any game that you see Dallas or the Islanders in is going to end up being a low-scoring game this year. And, for some people, that's great. Some people really like that. For others, it's sort of like, well, this isn't as exciting as other games that are on, so maybe I won't be tracking this one as much as the others. There's not as much happening. But we'll see what happens with that. And now I got to go ahead and change boards again. And next up, former divisional rivals, the Detroit Red Wings and the Nashville Predators. This game, of course, starting at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific. Time's very prominent on every board from here going forward. In previews and reviews, I don't need to tell you when the game started. No. The Detroit Red Wings making their debuts. They debut tonight. The Kings will be making their debut tonight as well. That will mean all 31 teams have at least played one game. Nashville, of course, won their first game of the year in kind of convincing fashion against Minnesota. In the matter of Detroit, they were 32-40-10 last year. In October, they were 3-7-2, and that's where that really slow start can bite you. They never really fully recovered from that. They had a good November, but if they'd had a good October as well, who knows? On the road, they were 15-21-5 last year, and of course their leading scorer was Dylan Larkin, 32 goals, 41 assists for him. Andreas Athanasiou, 30 goals, 24 assists. Mantha, 25 goals, 23 assists for him to lead the way for Detroit, who actually won both games against Nashville last year. Now, while Detroit had the 2 wins against Nashville, not a lot of good news for Detroit fans in general. I still think Detroit's going to be better this year than last year. I don't know how much, but I think they will improve. Nashville won their first game, as I said. Duchesne had 3 assists in that first game. Nice debut. Forsberg a goal and an assist. Ellis a goal and an assist. Watson, Granlund, Arvidsson scored goals as well. So they're getting goals from everybody. Game-winning goal was actually from Austin Watson in that first game. Howard's been confirmed as the starter for the Detroit Red Wings. Your starter for Nashville is likely Saros. So I put that in red because it's listed as likely right now in Daily Faceoff. If they're in blue, it means they've been confirmed. And once we get into the games that start later, they haven't had their practices yet. That's how it's revealed who the starter is usually, is at practice that morning. And so we don't know yet for everybody. But again, early in the year, you could probably guess in most cases, I would think. Where you can look at the game, how important it is, and go, well, it's probably going to be this guy. And we don't get into who's hot and who's cold until right around, middle of the month before we start talking about that. And right now we're only at the 5th. So moving along, because there's not really a whole lot else to say with this. Nashville looks like they should be excellent this year. In Detroit, it's their first game. So we'll see where they're at tonight. And if they can score some goals, if they can avoid getting any injuries, if Howard can play, as the good Howard, there's a good Jimmy Howard, there's a mediocre Jimmy Howard. If we get the good Jimmy Howard, you just never know. They might be able to pull off that upset in Nashville tonight. But for the Predators, the way they looked in that first game, it's not going to be easy. All right, moving along now. Minnesota and Colorado, and these games are always entertaining. They are. Anytime Minnesota and Colorado play against each other, you get a pretty good game. Minnesota's coming off of a loss in their first game. Colorado coming off of a win. Minnesota's expected to be at the bottom of the Central Division by the end of the year. Colorado's expected to be a Stanley Cup contender this year. There is some pressure on Colorado. That is Stanley Cup pressure, and there is some pressure on Minnesota. And it's different because they're expected to be at the bottom, there's some pressure to prove everybody wrong. So Colorado's trying to prove everybody right. Minnesota's trying to prove everybody wrong. I say everybody, and yet there are fans in Minnesota and elsewhere who will say Minnesota's going to be better than people think, and fans who think Colorado's overrated. I see it a lot. In that first game, Dumba and Zucker had the goals for Minnesota. Power play goal, that was Zucker with that as well. He looked fantastic in that first game, he did. On the Colorado side, Donskoy had 2 goals in that first game, so did Mikko Rantanen, and JT Compher with a goal as well. Power play goals, Donskoy and Rantanen had the game-winning goal as well. So Mikko got off to a fantastic start. We'll see how he does tonight. No confirmation of goalies. I would think Dubnyk and Grubauer. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't those two. Although Dubnyk had a rough third period against Nashville, he was excellent in the first 2, and I think he'll bounce back. These teams split four games last year, so this is one of those ones that should be really, really solid. And for Minnesota, you want to stay relevant as long as possible, because if they go into Colorado tonight and they lose by a similar score to what they lost, let's say they lose 4-1, similar score to what they lost that game against Nashville too. Nashville was 5-2, so if they lose like 4-1 tonight, there are going to be people going, yeah, so Minnesota's already looking like they're in a rebuild, and that conversation will get started already. So for fans of the team and for the players, you want to nip that in the bud as quickly as possible. And for Colorado, you're expected to win the game. Now you got to go out and win that game when you're expected to win it, and that's a little bit different. It's a little bit different to be able to do that as opposed to being the plucky underdog. So there is a change in terms of what is the expectation. So yeah, if you're a fan of these teams, you're likely in for a really good game. Grab yourself some popcorn and enjoy. Next up, Boston in against the Arizona Coyotes. This one starts at 9 p.m. like this one, Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. So again, these games will have started before the other games I've already previewed have ended. So again, one man, one set of eyeballs. I will watch what I can when I can. This is interesting because while Boston got the victory over Dallas, it was not a fantastic victory. It wasn't a flawless victory. And Arizona, this is their home opener. This is a spot where I could see Boston dropping a game. And this is a spot where I could see Arizona getting some momentum and some fan interest and rewarding their fans. Again, it's a home opener, so Boston's going to have to withstand that first 5 minutes. Boston has a really rough schedule in October, so it's going to be key for them to survive this. Ritchie and Heinen had the goals in that first game. So the good news, too, if you're a Bruins fan, is they didn't really need the Bergeron line to win that first game. Power play goal, game-winning goal, Danton Heinen with both. On the Arizona side, 0-1, Derek Stepan with the only goal they scored in that first game. The other narrative for this would be that Arizona's had trouble scoring out of the gate last year and the year before. They really need to score some goals. Goligoski had 5 shots in that first game. Oliver Ekman-Larsson led them in ice time with 22 minutes and 27 seconds. He's going to play a ton. But yeah, Arizona's got to change the narrative. They've got to score some goals. Make sure you've got a lineup put together that can score. Kessel did have an assist in that first game, so maybe. Boston won both meetings between Arizona and the Bruins last year. Halak's been listed as likely for Boston. No confirmation with Arizona. I'd be really surprised if it wasn't Darcy Kemper. I'd be very surprised if Darcy Kemper wasn't starting. And I'd be mildly surprised if it's Halak. However, the way the Cassidys deployed as goaltenders, it has been a 1A, 1B situation in Boston. That statement I made about how if you don't have, if you have 2 starters, you don't have one. Where Boston proves that that's a little different is Halak has never really given the reins as a starter. And when it came playoff time last year, the net just belonged to Rask the whole playoffs. The one caveat with that was, if he had faltered, Halak would have been in there right away. So we'll see if they go with Halak and what happens from there for Boston. But this road trip is big to start the season. And the momentum they could gain off this if they have a really good record off this road trip, it could be huge. But again, Arizona is expected to get better this year. The pressure is different. And I would expect, hopefully, a large crowd tonight in Arizona. For the home opener, Come on, let's fill those seats and shut down a lot of the complaints that we see online about the attendance. Next up, Vancouver's in against Calgary. Bad news if you're a Canuck fan or a Canuck player. They did well against Calgary last year. They did. And this game won't start till 10 o'clock Eastern, which means it's going to be 8 o'clock local for Calgary. I know fans in Alberta don't like the late starts either. When you start an hour later for Hockey Night in Canada reasons, it can be... Well, it sucks because then the game doesn't end for you until like 10:30. The Canucks, of course, 0-1. The Flames 0-1. These teams don't want to end up 0-2. The Canucks could very well end up 0-2 after tonight. And then the Vultures will be circling and everybody will be screaming for the hills. It's amazing how much people react, how quickly to just a couple of games. Pearson had a goal. Edler had a goal in that first game. Pearson had 11 shots, as any Canuck fan will tell you. I thought, Pearson looked great. The problem was they weren't able to put Edmonton away. A lot of that has to do with Mike Smith. Smith was fantastic, but they need to overcome likely Riddick tonight. There hasn't been any confirmation at the time I'm recording this for these teams. Monahan a goal and an assist in that first game against Colorado. Gaudreau with a goal and an assist as well. And Giordano had the other goal, or had a goal as well, I should say. Power play goals were scored by Monahan and Gaudreau. So for Vancouver, their penalty kill has to be solid because Calgary's power play already looks pretty darn good. I would imagine Vancouver goes with Markstrom, and we see, I would think Riddick at the other end of the ice. I do anticipate Calgary winning this game. I do. If I had to, if somebody says, well, who do you think is going to win it? Probably Calgary, because I still think Calgary's the better team than Vancouver. The odd thing is that as a Canuck fan, I don't expect them to make the playoffs this year. I expect them to be better than last year. And, that's as far as it goes for me. And we'll see how they do in Calgary. But for me, I look at their record last year. Vancouver was 3-2. But 2 of those wins were in overtime against Calgary. So, it was a close matchup between these teams every time. I would think if Vancouver at least gets it to overtime, at least get that far, that would be impressive. I'm going to go and watch some Canuck games live this year. And if they lose all of them, well, at least I enjoyed myself, is going to be the attitude I take into it. We'll see how I feel on the other side of it, though, whether I still feel that way. And then people will track whether or not I'm the jinx. But anyways, there you go. I'm going to go ahead and go to my last board, 4th board, and for people following along at home, that's a record. If you're a Sharks fan, this is not a good time. It's not. Coming off the back-to-back losses and a game away from getting Evander Kane back in the lineup, now you get to go to Anaheim. And Anaheim in that first game against Arizona, it was a sleepy game and whatnot, but this is exactly what the Sharks don't want. They're going to be coming into this one probably a bit banged up from those games against Vegas. Vegas is tough, and mentally probably a little bit exhausted. And 0-2. Anaheim, on the other hand, they're 1-0. The Ducks will give absolutely zero sympathy to the San Jose Sharks after missing the playoffs last year. And Anaheim had a good record against San Jose last season. Now, on the San Jose side of things, they've scored 2 goals so far this year. Sorensen and Gaudreau with the goals. LeBanc and Thornton stand out as -4s on this team. So Kevin LeBanc, who banked on himself with the contract he got through 2 games, it's been a different story. Sorensen's got 14 penalty minutes so far. Really? Like Sorensen with 14 penalty minutes in 2 games? Playing like Chris Nyland out there. Anyways, Brent Burns leads the way in ice time with 27 minutes, 44 seconds on average. He's played a ton. He's had his challenges. Carlson as well in the one game that he played against Vegas. And tonight they're going to look to completely wipe that slate clean against Anaheim. But again, they just played last night. Anaheim should be a little more rested. Grant and Fowler had the goals in that game for Anaheim. Game-winning goal for Cam Fowler. Hopefully he doesn't end up taking another puck to the face. Am I going to be saying this every time that Anaheim plays a game? Because it feels like it's happening a lot with Fowler. Lindholm, 24 minutes and 9 seconds on average. I would think Arundel starts tonight for San Jose. We're already into does it matter territory when it comes to the goaltending for San Jose. That's not a narrative that Sharks fans or players wanted to continue into this year. On the Anaheim side, I would expect Gibson. This is a big game. I would expect Gibson. Anaheim was 2-1-1 against the Sharks last year. So they did win 2 and lose 2, but one of those losses was in overtime. So yeah, Anaheim's 2-1-1 technically. But it should be a fun game between two California teams who don't like each other. And honestly, for Anaheim, take the body, get physical. Definitely, you've got a Sharks team coming in who should be second guessing themselves a little bit. Take the body early and get as many shots on their goaltending as you can. Whoever's in net, whether it's Dell or Jones, get as many shots in on them as you can, as quickly as you can. Take advantage. This is a team coming out of a humiliating loss last night. And so we'll see if the Ducks can do that. And on the San Jose side, strike early. If the Sharks can come out tonight, and if they can get off to a 1-0 lead through, say, the first 5 or 10 minutes, and then settle things down, they've got a shot. But they need that quick start. So watch for an intense first, I'd say 5 or 10 minutes of the first period of this game. It'll be back and forth. And of course, it starts at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. So looking forward to that. That's going to be a good one. And last but not least, the Oilers at home against the Kings. In another battle between two teams trying to be relevant that missed the playoffs last year. New Jersey and Buffalo being another example of that tonight. The Oilers at 1-0, they want to keep this going. The Kings making their season debut tonight. They've had a nice long summer. And they've watched teams play for the last 3 days, and now it's their turn. They're 31-42-9. That was their record last season. On the road, 14-21-6. In October, they were 3-7-1. Kopitar led the way in scoring, 22 goals, 38 assists, 60 points. Dustin Brown, 22 goals, 29 assists, 51 points. Drew Doughty, 8 goals, 37 assists, 45 points for Doughty. On the Edmonton side of things, Leon Draisaitl had a goal and two assists. Interestingly enough, at practice today, they're together. They're practicing on a line together. So I guess Dave Tippett after one game went, nah, throw them together. Benning, 2 assists in that first game. Zach Kassian, a goal and an assist. And Connor McDavid, of course, had that big goal late that was the winner. So he's the heroic one for the Oilers after one game, which should surprise absolutely nobody. Seriously, if you're surprised that McDavid was the hero. Both teams won 2 games in this series last year between each other, or against each other. For the Kings, they've got Jonathan Quick in net. If Quick really nails things down, that could be good. I would imagine Mike Smith plays tonight for Edmonton. He was excellent against Vancouver. I would anticipate him playing tonight. And if he does, I would expect more excellent results out of him. It's easy to forget that Mike Smith was really good over the second half of the season last year for Calgary. Like, Flames fans will say, well, but Riddick was hurt and Riddick wasn't 100%. And he had a down second half. But also part of that was that Mike Smith, after a miserable first half, was really good that second half. And in the first round against Colorado, Mike Smith was not the problem. So I've also seen the narrative out there of, well, Riddick didn't play in the playoffs, so who knows what might have happened. And I'm thinking, okay, so we're just going to rewrite things because it wasn't his fault at all. I don't look at Mike Smith and say, well, if Riddick had been in, because that's just not accurate. So he will continue to go out there and prove that the aging process doesn't apply to him. And Jonathan Quick is trying to do the same for the Kings. We watched Corey Schneider last night for New Jersey get hurt. Jonathan Quick, a goalie who gets hurt a lot as well. He's going to be looking to stay healthy this year. And it starts with tonight's game. Just stay healthy, go out there and play. I would think that the most games Quick will play this year is 50. I don't think they play him more than that. Because of his injury history, I can't see Quick playing more than 50 games. And not only that, but Jack Campbell, really, really solid backup as well. So it should be an interesting one early. Let me know in the comment section below your winners and all that wonderful stuff. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching. Saturday night, nothing better to do than watch hockey, right? That's just me. That's fine. That's fine. All right. I will talk to you again soon.